I saw this article that when just saw the headline, I thought, hey, this is going to be interesting to talk about because clearly Denmark is taking steps to try to make the plant-based dystopia a reality. And they seem to be leading the way. And at a quick scan of the article, that's what it looked like. But in reality, this is the best the governments that are pushing plant-based diets on us have. And it's practically hysterical. You see, the governments of especially Northern Europe that have really gone all in on the end of decade emissions goals have really come to realize that nobody wants what they're pushing, to the point where they can't even really force it on their populations because it will cost them power if they do it. And so they're kind of in they're between a rock and a hard spot, as it were. So we get this headline from Plant-Based News, a vegan propaganda outlet. Denmark unveils groundbreaking roadmap towards plant-based food. Most of the article is them complaining that other European countries aren't doing anything, or that some other European countries are taking slight steps in the direction to, by the end of the decade, get to where they're supposed to be, which is 70% below the 1990 numbers for carbon and the rest of it. Their groundbreaking method here is they're putting hundreds of millions of kroner, or around hundreds of millions of dollars or euros, into teaching chefs how to make plant-based foods taste good. I don't think I should have to tell you that that's absurd. That the people they're training are largely not going to be impacting the normal lives of everyday people, and it's certainly not training for normal people in general, but this is how they have to do it. They're going to do that, and then they're almost certainly going to go find their country's celebrity chefs, and celebrity chefs are a cancer on the culture in general, but they're going to take their country's celebrity chefs and then try to use this to propagandize people into thinking highly processed plant foods that are substitutes for clean foods are the way of the future. This is actually good news for us. This really is, because most people can learn how to cook a steak properly. Most people can cook a hamburger properly. And any other meat, not complicated meat dish you can think of, most people can learn to do properly. And same is true with ketogenic and other low-carb alternatives. The government is never going to have to go out of their way and train people on how to cook these things. Which is why this is really funny to me, because this is all they have. I take this to be a win, because this is all they have. They have no other means of pushing this on people other than to go and spend stupid amounts of money training their country's chefs, who will be cooking for people of means more than anything else, to adopt plant-based diets. They're going to push their chefs to teach them how to make plant-based foods palatable. And sure, there'll be some trickle-down effects from this. A lot of these celebrity chefs, anywhere you go, have frozen food meal lines. I mean, I've seen this at Walmart recently, that Food Network people now have their own frozen meal product lines, which I find really funny that Gordon Ramsay would put his face and his name on frozen packaged meals, but I guess that's where we are. It's a sign that they have nothing really to go on, because the economy is now in the West in a bad enough state that they can't exactly use economic means to push this on people. Plant-based foods, especially like the meat alternatives, are just horrifically more expensive than the real food counterparts. We've talked about this so many times, it's almost boring to talk about. But you go to the meat aisle at the store and you see the fake meat products sitting next to the real thing, and they're always more expensive. Nothing they've done has brought the price down. Now, that might change. We've seen some of the stories I've covered in the recent past have indicated. That might change to some degree. There is some talk now of lab-grown meat cultures that are technically meats, but people who are familiar with the process are raising a red flag on this because they're closer to cancer cells than they are to actual meat. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to eat that. But that might be the closest thing they can convince people to eat. The rest of it, I can't even imagine. Like, if they're going to the place of trying to convince basically the people who cater to the upper tiers of the middle class, the professional class, and higher. They're not going to get to normal people, normal working people who they just, their little pleasure in life is having their steak once a week, right? That's their having their cheeseburger or whatever. They're not going to convince them to abandon the same food that their ancestors ate going back all the way to the beginning of people and adopt factory-made slop more so than most people already have. And remember, Americans eat a much higher percentage of factory-made slop than a lot of other people do. So I would almost think this stuff would have a better chance in America. But again, we're a culture that loves to eat meat. I take this as a sign of desperation on their part. It's a wonderful thing, and I really hope we see more of it. I really hope we see them just continue flushing money down the toilet until maybe there's at some point the citizens of those countries say enough and they get rid of these zealots from these positions of power. And I find it most interesting because that article spends enough time decrying how in the UK the political parties there, the party in power, at least for the moment, if you know anything about UK politics, they're basically saying no to the zealots. And that article has shed some tears because they got called a nasty name, basically. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think this is good news that their groundbreaking method for helping move their country towards a plant-based diet future is to try to train professional chefs to make plant-based foods taste good? That if that's where they are, then they haven't realized yet that most people don't eat out much anymore because it's just too expensive? I'm curious what you think about that, so let me know in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help, so to sharing this on social media, that helps too. I'm Anthony Stine, the Practical Carnivore. Thanks for tuning in.